Data science is the secret sauce of smart cities. You can't have a smart city without data science, and you can't have data science without communication. And the best way of communicating is with visualizations, because truly that is the shared common language that we all have. Can you all hear me? Okay? A little, I'm soft. Speak louder. Speak louder, okay. So data visualization, that's the common language that unites all of us, okay? We can't really move ahead, and one of the things that we're all going to be talking about is the importance of open platforms and the idea of collaboration so that all the parts of a smart city can evolve and can adapt naturally over time, right? So it shouldn't be something where one vendor comes in and says, this is the way you're going to do it, or else, right? It has to be something that's fluid and flexible and continually building, and that's what's so great about our panel today. And let's see. We just introduced them. The glasses, please. We have Alison Brooks to my left here, Senior Vice President, yes, she's a Research Vice President at IDC, one of my favorite companies. We have Bennett Indart, Senior Vice President of NTT, and out of Palo Alto. And we have Alberto Bernal Garcia of MSAT. Indra. Okay, my fault. And we're going to let Alberto kick off. So there you go. Without further ado, we're going to jump into it. We hope you enjoyed.
Bravo. Where is my presentation? Okay. As I have 8 minutes, I'm trying to be fast and pragmatic. First thing, I represent a company called Indra Minsight. Indra Minsight is the leading IT company in Spain and Latin America, so it's a big company. We've been doing smart city projects for the last 10 years. We have many things and many projects, but that you can see if you go to our stand, which is at the center of at the other side of a congress, but it's a very big stand, and you will see Indra and Minsight. And there you can see what we're showing. This is data. What we're showing is real-time connections to smart projects in several cities in Spain and in Europe. You will see. You can see a smart city platform, which is the basis for the use of all this data coming from the cities. But you can also see projects that include platforms managing in an integrated way all sorts of services. For example, in Las Palmas, which is a 350,000 inhabitants city in an island in Spain, they are managing with the platform services like transport, mobility, the municipal fleet management, waste management, irrigation, tourism, etc., all together integrated in the platform. In terms of data, I'll show you. Well, this is a presentation, so this is a big company. These are some of the projects we're doing, so quite a lot. These are all projects. We've done more than 150 smart city projects. Some of them include big verticals like mobility, security, etc. But those projects that you see there, they all include a smart city platform, or someone called city brain, or etc. So they all have that platform managing all data coming from all different sources. Wait. Okay. Let me show you. This is the solution for managing cities and territories that we call City Landscape Manager. There you see, we have come to the conclusion that you need to present data, of course, to different profiles and then in a different manner. So this City Landscape Manager has 3 views. One is the view for the politicians, the mayors, the president of regions, etc. And there they see, not this view, but basically what they see are the KPIs of more interest for them. Then there is another view you see that one over there. This is just a PowerPoint, but you should go to the stand and you'll see it in real time. But in this view, you have the information for each of the verticals that are integrated in the platform. So you can see the consumption of water, the cost or the reduction in cost of water. You can see the routes of a waste management, how much they are consuming the trucks, what is the SLA of a waste management service, etc., etc., etc. And then, of course, there is the view of the citizen or the visitor. You could see also here. I can show. Well, you see, this is data from traffic and air quality. So basically, what we can show is real-time data of the different services. We can also use that data and do analysis of big data and detect patterns and trends. We can also do operations with the infrastructure in the city, so like alerts or information to citizens, etc., through all the different channels. And we can also, as we have all the information in the same place, information from traffic, air quality, tourists coming in a cruise, etc. We have everything integrated in the same place. What we can do is go beyond and produce or create new services, for example, prescriptive, predictive, or even do simulations of things that could happen. And then I'll give you an example. I think it's my last minute. If we have information from the traffic and from the air quality, plus information, historical information of how the weather has been in the last 10 years, we can use that to simulate the effect or the impact of taking a measure like reducing the speed on the highways around the city, or limiting the parking capability in the city. We can simulate that and see when and if that action needs to be taken, or not yet, and also the impact that those actions have on the air quality, for example. I could be talking about this for hours, but as I don't have more time, I'll say it again. Please come to our stand. I'll see everything.
Alberto, while you're here, quick question, which is, do you find that it makes the implementations go faster if you share the data more smartly? In other words, is sharing the data, is that a key?
This is also from experience. In our experience, being these projects very complex in terms of organization, in terms of people, in terms of integration of systems and data, etc., they are complex. The best way, the successful way to do these projects is to choose 1, 2, 3 priority use cases, be them monitoring infrastructure or doing analytics to detect a trend or do a simulation, but 2 or 3 which are important. They could be of those 3 natures. One is just sort of more IoT, like monitoring infrastructure and acting on the infrastructure. The other one could be the trends of the flow of tourists coming to a city, when they come, if they come on Monday or Friday or Tuesday, where they come from, how much do they spend, that analytical part. And then it's very interesting to make people understand the benefit or impact of a smart city project, to show that combination capabilities, because these are real valuable services that have a lot of impact. And so start with projects like 6-9 months of duration with that 3-4 use cases, and so the political responsibles, they can show impacts quickly. Otherwise, normally these projects, they will decay.
That's really important, the transparency. The data is really key to the transparency. Thank you, Alberto. That was a fantastic presentation. Okay. All right. Ben, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Buenos dias. Excuse me. My name is Bennett Indart. I represent a company by the name of NTT, big group company. How many of you here have heard of NTT? You guys in the front row, you don't count. So NTT is a pretty large telecom company, one of the largest in the world. We're in a lot of different businesses, from telecom to technology to managed services, cloud and data centers, all of those things. We spend a lot of money on R&D every year, and one of the things that's come out of that is our smart city initiatives that we'll talk a little bit about today. And we're here to talk about data visualization, so my discussion will be part of that. One of the things that Mike asked in preparation for this discussion is, what are one of our favorite visualizations? And this one, how many of you have seen this before? It's pretty famous. It's about Napoleon's march on Moscow in 1812, as represented by an artist, actually, kind of a historical data scientist, Menard. But it really shows a lot of different things. And the thing that I thought was most interesting about this, and why I like it, is because it has multiple variants, right? It shows the lighter shade of the onslaught to and the march to Moscow, and the 400 and some odd thousand troops that Napoleon started with, and how they made their progression, and the band got smaller as troops kind of, either died or went, different places. Like you can see a couple of different offshoots here, and then you get to Moscow, and something changed. Weather became a part of the equation. And you see the dark lines coming back of the troops that made it back, and only 10,000 made it actually back to the Polish border because of the winter. And you can see at the bottom, there's also a scale of temperature, and on those different days of temperature. So it's a really, I think, a very interesting depiction and visualization of a pretty complex story, right? And so that's kind of how I look at visualization, data visualization, in the way a smart city would, right? So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that come up, and my team at NTT is getting tired of hearing this. It's all about the data. It's all about the data. And I say that a lot of times data visualization is that last mile. If you're running a marathon, it's the last mile. It's probably the most important mile, but it is the last. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into getting the data prepped, collecting that data, curating that data, right? And it comes in all different types. So you can see here, there's different patterns, and IoT just exacerbates that. Creating more data, person to machine, machine to machine, thousands of and terabytes of data, right? So we need to be very, very conscious of that as we create our smart city solutions, as well as how and what we do with that data, right? So one of the things that is, as I go along this story, calibrating and curating the data from ingestion at the source. And by the way, in a smart city, there's not just one source. There's lots of sources, thousands of sources of data. Depending on the use case that you're trying to solve, that data can come out into a noisy, in the beginning, very unstandardized format. And it's our job to work with that data to get it into a format that we can then use to visualize on a screen for someone to make a decision about, right? Because in the end of the day, it's all about making decisions in the environment that you live in. In smart cities, it's all about making decisions that are best for the citizens that live in the cities, right? So this is an example of one of the screens that we've created for a smart city in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's for a dispatcher, somebody that's looking at a screen, throughout the day. There's different icons on the screen that show different things to look for, like in a city grid, like traffic or wrong way vehicles, persons of interest, vehicles of interest, those types of things, right? One of the things I thought would be interesting to show is how you can take a visualization like this in an actual setting if I can use my mouse and just click on it. Here we go. And you'll see here that the dispatcher will walk through it looking at a particular alert there, and that alert is a wrong-way driver, right? And up will pop a video of an actual intersection within the city of Las Vegas where there is a wrong-way driver, and you can see here the video's not working very well, but the car went the wrong way, and there was actually a cop that's sitting at the corner who's pulling him over. So that's one way to take real-time data and interact it with data that's historical. Now, there's a lot of other things going on this screen. There's ways to show predictive information. Our last speaker was talking about integrating weather information and weather data into crowd counting and different ways to look at how people move within a city. Weather is a big indicator of that. We can also look at traffic patterns. So this is a good example of where you can measure where a car might come into a city grid, and based on historical information, how long it would take them on average to exit at certain exit points, right? So these are just different analytics and ways to visualize things, right? Another one is to show a lot of different things on a screen. So you can see on the left here, we've got like where the different cameras are. We have even show where some of the police officers might be, right? And overlay that with some graphics to kind of make that a smarter screen for someone who is managing either parks and recreation, somebody who might be doing public safety, so on and so forth. And then, of course, you want to take that data and you want to do something with it historically. So here's an example of historical traffic and historical crowd counts overlaid across each other for the city of Las Vegas in the intersections that we're managing in this case. Right? So that just shows historical ones, and then we can also do where you take that historical analysis and run an algorithm on it to predict. And in this case, we're looking at about a 93% accuracy rate over time with the model that we predicted, and using weather as another indicator. And you can also add things like social media. You can do Las Vegas, 100,000 people come in each week and 100,000 people leave each week, right? So you can look at the convention schedules. You can also interact with that to start to begin to predict how crowds are going to flow throughout your city. Why is that important? Well, because the city needs to be able to dispatch the right people and take care of the services and take care of the citizens that are within that city. So if there's a really large convention coming in a certain part of the city, they're going to want to make sure they have the right resources there. So last but not least, Las Vegas is one of our kind of marquee clients in terms of the smart city, but these are all the different things in terms of use cases that NTT data can provide today, third-party data and everything that you see here. One of the things that I will add as I close is that it is all about the data, but you can't really start, and you shouldn't really start, a smart city program without understanding the outcome first. So you need to know what you're looking for, and you need to build that use case out, and then go backwards to find out what data you're going to need and how you're going to categorize that. So thank you for having me today. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Ben, fantastic presentation. And by the way, just a quick question. Because Las Vegas essentially is a city that runs on numbers, was it easier for you to make the case for good data science there?
Yeah, I think the data science, it's interesting. I think each city has different things that are, important to them, and I think, the way that they react, right? Some cities are big on tourism, like Las Vegas. Some cities have different indicators, right, that are important to them, right? So I wouldn't say that it was a lot easier in Las Vegas, but they did have some real issues that they needed to solve, and because we were able to go in and be predictive and show that we had accuracy, that was a very big plus for us. So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Thank you again. That was great. Okay. Alison, you're up.
Hi, everybody. So as mentioned earlier, I am our research VP on our Global Smart Cities team at IDC, and my area of responsibility, my subject matter expertise is in public safety. At IDC, we do an annual study called the Global Data Sphere, and as you can see here, these are just our projections as to how fast information is growing across all verticals, but it's really that hockey stick projection that you're seeing. And that really does actually lead to these difficulties we're seeing in the smart city spaces with regards to managing data, as Bennett was just talking to, but more importantly, the ability to derive insights out of that at the end of the day. So when we look at the applications of this in public safety, which is, again, my area of expertise, on the video side of the equation, you can see that the sources of video evidence that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis being used in investigations are really metastasizing. And even a year ago, I wouldn't have been up here talking to you about, say, the critical importance of drone video, but it's being used in incredible situations to, say, for example, clear traffic accidents or to respond to crime instantly. They get to the scene of the crime 5 minutes faster than your average police car can. So this on the left is all of the different types of video that your regular police organization is having to integrate into its day-to-day operations. But on the digital asset sides, we're seeing the same sort of thing where there's that metastasization of like the use of smart holsters and smart weapons. Again, that's sort of the LiDAR reconstruction of crime scenes or traffic accidents. All of that has to be operationalized in a way that it makes the ability to clear the intersections or to clear up the crime faster and more easier to derive insights from. So this is what I sort of study on a day-to-day basis. I think I'm too far away. Here we go. This is what your typical kind of hotspot analysis looks like for crime across cities. Again, he had asked us for our sort of a good example of a data visualization in this subject area, and this is the one I offered up as an example, but in actual fact, my favorite data visualization story is that one, you probably saw it on Facebook recently with the quarter by quarter album charts of like the Beatles and Elton John. That was my favorite one, but anyways. But this is what it really helps law enforcement and public safety agencies plan their force deployment and where they should be putting their resources and how bad things are trending, and this is just an example of how that looks. And again, back to your point, Bennett, you have to have all of those data sources that are coming from the slide that I showed previously being able to be ingested into that platform in a way that can be made sense of. One sec. I think it's got to be closer to the... Here we go. About a year ago, I did a very large study on big data analytics and visualization within public safety. We typically look at the use of visualization solutions in what are called real-time crime centers or real-time ops centers or sometimes emergency ops centers. I profiled 6 different case studies to look at exactly how they were using these visualization solutions so that could be offered up as a best practice knowledge to policing agencies, again, globally. And I just want to talk about a couple of key findings from 2 of the case studies because they're important. So the first one is the New York City Crime Center. Really there they had sort of a huge data amalgamation and integration and unification for usability challenge because they had, say, 24 mega databases that all had to be speaking the same sort of language before they could actually put that all together in that sort of fashion. So what they did was they just created a sort of a rolling integration and test and operations and usability kind of a strategy, and that allowed them to be able to track in real time in their crime center using visualization in a way that they weren't able to previously. The second example is the New South Wales Regional Fire Service in Australia. If you imagine what they have in their ops center is it's a 2-story atrium with all of the various stakeholders that are involved in any kind of an emergency around a raid in the room physically. But on the actual video wall is every single piece of critical information starting at the center first with the critical information at the very center, and then things that are more peripheral around the edge. So if you want to actually track the weather in terms of the actual data visualization that's coming from the metro, et cetera, to track how, say, for example, a fire is moving, you have all of that information at your disposal. So those are two instances of those 6 case studies. And we also did a vendor profiling of a vendor analysis of vendors, key vendors like NTT in the space, and so there's an analysis of that for you. If any of you want to get your hands on that, just email me. I'm abrooks@idc.com, and I can send that your way. I think that's the last slide that I offered up as a point for discussion, but yep.
Okay, we all need to remember what an incredibly important role data science is now playing in public safety. This is, this is something that really, in the old days, I mean, when I was a kid, the only people that were using data science were large pharmaceutical companies, right? Now, we can actually, this has a direct impact on us. This is impacting our safety and public health, and I'm just so happy that both of you have brought up, this is where data science and smart cities really, they're joined at the hip. And so how many of you here are data scientists or statisticians? Oh, good, good. Okay, so we're going to have, now we're going to do our Q&A free-for-all, but I'm going to ask one question of each, and while we're doing this first round of questions, please think of the questions that you want to ask so we can make this really interactive, okay? So, Alison, to you, how do you feel data visualization is becoming a game changer?
Well, I think it allows agencies in public safety to really understand proactively. It allows them to stop working reactively, which if you imagine law enforcement and emergency response, that's kind of their job, is to react to things. But this allows them to take a more proactive approach to what they're doing. So from a workforce preparedness and optimization, when they're so budgetarily constrained, they really need to be operating that way. And it just allows them to work smarter in terms of using data within an emergency response, for example, so that they know what types of resources or ladders or how many people they have to bring to a given event, just by virtue of how they can see the pictures of how it actually is all unfolding.
Wow, that's a great, thank you. So Ben, what are some of the best ways to measure success for cities, and what are the best KPIs to look at?
Well, let's see. I think, I was going to actually add a little bit to the previous question, which is,
go.
There's a lot of, I think, benefit to visualization in any aspect, especially in cities. But even today, I think the visualization that we have today is going to be a precursor to additional things around automation. Right, so we can start to think about, there's making advances with AI that are, a lot machine to machine, being able to come up with some decisions, and based on those decisions, automatically come up with another action, right? Instead of relying a lot, today in cities, especially in public safety areas, there's a lot of manual looking at a pane of glass, and if we can help the authorities or the people that are managing the parks, for example, with a little bit more automation in the things that are sort of typical decisions that they would make during the day, like whether to turn the sprinklers on if it's raining or not. Those types is a simple example, but those types of things where you use AI and machine learning, then the visualization becomes even more important because you're getting down to the exception management, which is what we all want to do. We don't want to react to false positives all the time in the data that we're dealing with. We want to see the things that are truly meaningful and the things that we can really, make an impact on. So
I just want to add to that. Quickly. At IDC, we've created an AI maturity evolution framework, similar to like what you have on the levels for autonomous vehicles. We've done that across our artificial intelligence maturity, and then all of the sort of sub-vertical analysts like myself have gone and applied that to public safety, so that exists as well. And it's at our booth, the output of that document, that research is at our booth if you're interested in seeing that what that looks like.
That's so good to hear about the AI maturity model. I'm just delighted to, again, how many of you, I assume that most of you are, working in machine learning and AI to some degree or another, right? Just quick show of hands. Okay, does this idea of, is it too early for a maturity model, or are we? Do you feel as though maybe like 18 months from now you're going to have a better handle on using machine learning and AI?
I don't mean to answer for the audience. We don't have any microphones, but in public safety, for example, there's limits to how much you really want the machine to be making decisions for you, right? You don't want facial recognition just to be sort of picking off, people at will. You have to use it as a lead generation tool, not as the actual final say. So that's what we mean by, there's a difference between who's generating the insight and who's taking action.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let me ask the audience here. So, how many of you are, or how many of you or your constituents have expressed concerns about privacy? Okay. How do those concerns manifest themselves? For instance, I have a friend in Austin who is really worried because his constituent said, "Why are you taking pictures of my license plates?" You know. And of course, the answer is so we know where the traffic is. But he had to explain that to them. How many of you find yourselves explaining the importance of data to your constituencies? Yeah. Do you have a story you can tell us?
Well, the big thing is just about
Yeah.
people's faces and people in public, right?
Yeah.
So what we've developed is doing it on the edge and doing the classification on the edge and getting rid of the image immediately. So
Yeah.
that even if you were to steal the camera, that the image is not there.
Oh, that's great.
Right, yeah.
That's a really great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've done that. We've done the same, right? So the edge is a great place to
Thank you.
kind of secure that information, especially if you're just looking for, like, you know, we have in the U.S. we have things called an Amber Alert when there's a child abducted, right? And that is something where you definitely want to find that child, or there may be a license plate of the car that, you know, abducted the child. So you're looking for specific things. The rest of it you don't care about, and so you have to trash it right away. But once you find that one thing, that's what you need, right? And immediately send that off to the authorities.
I think, too, on the subject of privacy, so I think it's really important to be picking the right sensor for the right purpose, right?
Yep.
And I'm starting
good
to
point,
talk
yeah.
to, like, my clients about having a sensor strategy, because you don't necessarily need to use facial recognition to count people.
Nope.
You can just use, you know, like, that's
Wi-Fi.
yeah, exactly. And also, so we're seeing a whole huge adoption of LiDAR now, because it allows you to, you know, track and shape without actually compromising your identities that way. So we're definitely seeing ways around this. In public safety, what I'm seeing is a much more proactive approach to having the tightly scoped policy framework in effect to in advance, so that you can actually then dispel fears proactively that way.
Right.
I love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I was going to add one more thing in terms of our approach in NTT to the data privacy question is that when we're dealing with a city, in terms of ownership of that data, we don't own that data. That data is owned by the city, and it's subject to their policies. So that's our approach.
Yeah, Ben, following up on that, what policies or strategies should cities avoid to avoid running into problems?
Well, I think just what we talked about, right? I mean, making sure that you do understand where that data is and what you're looking for, and have policies around of privacy information, right? So facial recognition. There's technologies out there today that can recognize people without looking at their faces, right? Recognize gait, and so if you're looking for somebody that's constantly loitering in an area, right? So you have a loitering problem, or you have a problem where a park is open for a certain time of day, and after dusk it closes, but you see the same people going in every day. Not necessarily, there's technology that can recognize them without recognizing their face, recognizing their gait, recognizing how they move, right? It's pretty futuristic stuff, but it gets away from, you know, the facial recognition piece of it. But again, it's making sure that you're very sensitive to the policies of the local, you know, regional and national government that you're working with.
How many of you are municipal or government work for government? Are there many? Because so what is the responsibility of the vendor to remind your bosses of how this stuff works? In other words, like, do you it's entirely possible. I assume you're a data scientist. You know, you're not the mayor. What happens if the mayor says, "Yeah, let's do this"? How do you work with the vendor to kind of remind everybody that there need to be policies? See, I'm taking the
Just to
idea
quickly
of
recap, what he was
very
saying was that he
seriously.
wanted to have solutions that avoided vendor lock-in, were interoperable, standards-based, and assured that there was some sort of usability for the residents and the public that was actually sort of able to then go and take that data for their own use. Is that right? It's critical to public safety as well, for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, that's a great insight, and thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any other challenges that you want to surface for here? Because these are two experts who really know their stuff. They're more than just vendors. They really understand what's going on.
Right here, Mike. Center.
You're the center. Yeah. Again. Yeah.
Question for Bennett in regards to the Las Vegas case study that you were sharing. You talked about gunshot detection and specifically screams. That scream seems like a very difficult one from a machine learning classification standpoint, especially with the intent behind it. Is it a happy scream? Someone's happy in Vegas?
Right. Yeah.
Versus somebody is very unhappy, which is a very different effect that has to happen. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the machine learning process you went through with that, and how you kind of use other data points as well to help determine the intent, like location or time of day or anything like that?
Right. Those are all factors in determining that. The other thing is
Repeat the question.
oh, I'm sorry. The question was screams and gunshots, and how do you train machine learning algorithms to detect those types of things, right? Well, first of all, though, I mean, these are types of things that you definitely want to investigate, right? As your learning algorithm gets smarter and smarter, yes, you'll get less and less false positives, but you always want to make sure that you're investigating that. So over time, you're going to get the efficiencies of that trained algorithm, right? So I would say that we want to look at all of those things when they come in. You can also look at the crowd size around the area that the event happened or the alert came in on. That's a good indicator. We also want to see how quickly the crowd is moving. If there is a gunshot, are they moving in and out? So if you have direct feed, a lot of our places we have the ability to actually punch out and use a PTZ camera to pan out and look. Right, so only special individuals have that capability. So if the alert comes in and the person that's authorized, they're looking at the screen, they're a dispatcher, and they want to see, they can see the situation, and we call that situational awareness. So it's a combination of the algorithm detecting and then the human interacting.
Just to follow up on that, so from my perspective, I've recently published a market glance, which is basically all of the logos that are involved in every single piece of public safety, data-driven public safety. And I was really astonished to see how many actual vendors out there in the marketplace there are for acoustic sensors. And there's a bleed over from, say, for example, public safety into just like infrastructure monitoring and maintenance. Those same sensors that are used from an acoustic perspective can be used to figure out if your main bridges and tolls and et cetera are functioning properly. So that's what I mean by understanding the sort of the applications of the various sensors and various uses, and there's a whole fleet of vendors out there in the marketplace that are doing that. We're most familiar with ShotSpotter, I think, but there's like 20 of them that I could surface that are.
That's such a really good point. I'm really glad that you both raised it, and particularly Alison, the idea of different different sensors for different situations. So some sensors can be used for multi-purposes, but others, you really have to do a good job of selecting. In other words, you just can't throw a sensor or a microphone out there.
Yeah.
And that's something it's interesting how as we're sitting here, subspecialties are developing within data science for smart cities field, and that's one of the things that makes this so exciting, is that our field is evolving as we're sitting here and talking.
I would say too that there's a definite trend in terms of what I see, which is where you're trying to use the same, like the single asset, the camera, across multiple departments within a smart city. The issue is that then, for example, there's a bit of competition over who should be able to control. You're dealing with like the parks people that are trying to talk with the police department, and the police department are just, no, it's ours.
Parking.
Yeah, or parking, exactly.
Yeah.
But that is the actual, like in terms of economies of scale and cost efficiencies, that's where that's trending to.
Oh wow. Okay, we're going to wrap this up now. Do you guys have some closing thoughts?
I mean, data visualization for law enforcement, that whole notion that a picture is worth 1,000 words. You amp that up on scale and blow that up by 100 million. That's how valuable it is to law enforcement, public safety, because they can really see instantly and get the right information instantly to the right people with those solutions.
Good. Yep. And Ben?
No, thank you very much. Enjoyed the questions, and if you have any others, I'm here, or we have our booth in the back. So
Same.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is a really good panel. Thank you.